Another week, another loadout video here to round into your weekend. With yesterday's update, we saw a handful of weapon changes, but more importantly, the reintroduction of Rebirth Island in Season 4. So for those that want to play Warzone, there's a little bit of everything for you. The more traditional, larger scale Caldera experience, the new Resurgence map that offers up a ton of new ways to play in Fortune's Keep, and then the fan favorite everlasting Rebirth Island for those that want a bit more high action Resurgence mode gameplay, but aren't maybe quite a huge fan of the new Fortune's Keep offering. A little bit of everything for everybody. Today, however, we're going to be focusing on our loadout setups for the top 10 best meta loadouts for Rebirth and Fortune's Keep, focusing on that smaller scale Resurgence-based gameplay and returning to things like long range coming up in the future. But right now, we're going to be taking a look at that high action, fast-paced nature of Rebirth and Fortune's Keep. As we go along, drop your thoughts below. Is there any weapon on your top 10 list that didn't quite make this? And if so, feel free to drop your preferred builds for that weapon. With how healthy the meta can be right now outside of a few dominant weapons, there's really no definitive 1 to 10 list, and we're all here for the same reasons, to do as best as possible, so feel free to share it with your fellow community members. If you enjoyed the video, you find it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on the video, and if you're new to the channel, do be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all things Warzone, Modern Warfare 2, and anything Call of Duty related. That said, let's jump into it. So let's start with what changed, shall we? As of yesterday's weekly update, we ended up seeing the playlist change for the first time since Season 4 began. We ended up seeing, of course, the reintroduction of Rebirth Island after a week of it being unplayable, only having Fortune's Keep available, but then we also saw some weapon tuning in the way of the NZ41, UGM8, 3-line, Car 98K, and Type 99 sniper rifles, the Blixen, Marco, and a few attachments. Now, right up front on paper, that's a few weapons that are in that sort of meta mix, weapons that we've talked about and really broke down as top 10 performing weapons. So how much of those actually changed the power rankings? Let's start out with the first weapon and loadout here, the NZ41. The NZ had adjustments to the lower torso damage multiplier down to 1.0 from 1.11, so potentially noticeable changes, but the big changes, air quote on that, were made to the Orb Weaver 360mm BC barrel and the 6.5mm Sakura 50 round magazines, both meta loadout attachments. The Orb Weaver 360mm barrel saw a reduction in the horizontal recoil control, down 5%, and a muzzle velocity decrease down by 10% from where they both were previously. Noticeable, especially on that bullet velocity, but truly not really an issue in terms of practical gameplay. The 6.5mm Sakura 50 round magazine saw a decrease by 20% to the vertical recoil control and a 10% reduction in the horizontal recoil control, so on paper, pretty hefty nerfs there. But in practice, well, the NZ still lives on. Still a main meta weapon, I'd say maybe just not the clear-cut choice over the bar, but instead now just two sides of the coin here, like Coke or Pepsi, that debate on which one you might like better. It's still absurdly good. For this build, it's basically the same meta loadout that we've talked about before, but with one big attachment adjustment here to it. For this build, I'd recommend the MX Silencer, the Orb Weaver 360mm BC barrel. You can end up using the burst barrel if you'd like. There is that full auto option here to it, which again, then would allow you to get past some of that recoil control and bullet velocity adjustments, but still I think the Orb Weaver is probably my preferred out of the two. Personally, I'll still take the 2.5 times optic to have a little bit more zoom, but also negate any visual bounce. The Orb Weaver E-Pack stock, the hand stop, the 6.5mm Sakura round magazine, lengthened. Then instead of the polymer grip, we're going to be running the hatched grip along with frenzy and fully loaded. The big key adjustment here though being that hatched grip. The hatched grip really focuses on the horizontal and vertical recoil control, whereas the standard polymer grip excels in control during sustained fire and a bit more flinch resistance. So you're trading out a little bit in terms of that flinch resistance to really focus on other areas, but again, it doesn't detract from the weapon at all. So the NZ lives on. Next, the Marco. That's another solid choice here. I'd say that it was a top weapon in the SMG category, up there with the Armaguerra and the Blixen, but this update for Warzone yesterday saw a reduction in the hip fire accuracy when crouched or prone, and a movement speed decrease to the 300mm barrel, which, functionally speaking, changes next to nothing in terms of the meta build that you want. The Marco build that I'd recommend is the recoil booster, the body 240mm barrel for extra fire rate, so that barrel that ended up getting adjusted wasn't even one that you'd really want to use in most engagements. Then I'd run the slate reflector, the Perfetto Asada stock, the hand stop, or the skeletal if you want a little bit more movement speed here with that. The Nambu 64 round magazine, lengthened. I'm still running taped grip just because I like the extra bonus that it does afford in terms of speed, whereas it's pretty easy to control in close quarters anyway, so you don't don't really need to take too many recoil mitigating attachments, gung-ho, and then quick. Another weapon that got adjusted here, kind of rounding out the ones from our main meta builds that we'll talk about. We will come back to the UGM-8 in just a little bit, but the Blixen saw an adjustment to the max and mid damage ranges, as well as the RMK barrel. The max damage range was decreased by just about 3 meters, and the mid damage range was decreased by just over 2 meters. So while that closed the gap for the hardcore efficiency of it, for Rebirth Island and Fortune's Keep, that 2 to 3 meter change up isn't really going to be the end of the world. You're still going to be able to use this with absolute ease and do well with it. Then the RMK barrel saw a decrease to 15.2 meters for that max damage range, which is down by about 2 meters, just under 2 meters on a decrease. So again, not the end of the world, and realistically, the same build still applies. Recoil booster, the 9-inch RMK barrel. Though if you are looking for a different attachment here to run on it, you're not really liking it post-patch here, the 17-inch F3 barrel is still a solid choice as well. Just offers up some benefits in other areas, in recoil control and accuracy, bullet velocity, and flinch resistance, but you lose out on ADS speed, sprint to fire speed, movement speed, and idle sway control. So again, it really comes down to preference based there. Slate reflector, removed stock, the hand stop, the Grenko 54 round magazine, lengthened, taped grip, fleet, as well as quick. So again, a build that is still very dominant and maybe familiar if you've been using it for quite some time now at this point. Next, I want to talk about the Armaguerra. The Arma is one that is a lot of fun to play around with. It is a very fast firing weapon, but something that can absolutely shred through your enemies. We talked about this before last week, so we're going to breeze through this one. The recoil booster, the 570 millimeter barrel. For me personally, I still like the iron sights of the MMSC, but the slate reflector is an awesome choice as well. You just get a little bit more ADS speed on that iron sight as opposed to the slate reflector, though again, difference is minimal. I'll run the folding stock, the skeletal underbarrel, the 60 round 9mm magazine, lengthened as your ammunition, taped grip, hard scope, as well as quick. Now, because we already talked about a couple of weapons that we've already seen in the top 10 loadouts that we talked about beforehand, I want to break it up a little bit by throwing in two that are very fun to use and still, especially on Rebirth Island and Fortune's Keep, can pack a punch, though they may be, I guess technically if we're taking it from like a 1 to 10 listing, they might be on the inside looking out, but to just break up the monotony a little bit here at this, first I want to talk about the Cold War MP5. Now, the Cold War MP5 is one that is very situational, and outside of Fortune's Keep or Rebirth Island, I really wouldn't recommend it in, say, your traditional BR Caldera experience here, that longer range stuff, just because it doesn't have a great efficiency at really any sort of range. The Cold War MP5 is phenomenal up close, but once you even get to medium range, like 10 to 15 meters of an engagement, that's where it really starts to trail off. So when you're in these close quarters engagements that are offered up on Fortune's Keep, that are offered up on Rebirth Island, it does have some time to shine. And honestly, it's been a fun deviation from just some of the meta weapons that we've talked about here in the past. I had a blast playing around with it. I even gravitated toward this as my main SMG the last couple of days. But anyways, I'd end up running the Agency Suppressor, Tiger Team Spotlight for that added movement speed and aim walking movement speed, the Bruiser Grip for a little bit more movement speed as well as hip fire accuracy, the 50 round drum mag, and then the Serpent Wrap for additional ADS speed. Noticeably absent is the Task Force Barrel. You can put that on, though I like to be running around with this here. And truthfully, the effective damage range that it extends out isn't a whole ton to be making it a high priority on this weapon. And then also, we don't really take a stock as well, just because you can make up some other movement and sprint to fire, as well as ADS speed bonuses in other attachments. So that is one that I would highly recommend. A lot of fun to, again, break up the monotony of what we've talked about before. Another one that does the same here is that of the MAC-10. Again, another weapon that might more so be on the inside looking out for Rebirth Island and Fortune's Keep weapon play, but still a lot of fun. Still very effective, and that fire rate honestly keeps up with a lot of the fire rates for Vanguard weapons, in terms of that's usually how we want to kit out the meta in this Chapter 3 Vanguard era of Warzone. For this, I'd recommend the Agency Suppressor, the Task Force Barrel, the Tiger Team Spotlight, the 53 round drum mag, as well as the Serpent Wrap as well. So again, similar builds, not necessarily identical to the Cold War MP5, but still one that is a lot of fun to play around with. It if you haven't played with the MAC-10 in a while, it's worth revisiting. It's a good time. Now, outside of that, we're going to jump back to some other weapons you may be familiar with here. The BAR is absolutely that other rifle that I would say is dominant right now. The key differences in terms of the NZ versus the BAR is, of course, the damage per shot and also the fire rate. Those are the two big ones here with this, but in terms of recoil control, if you kit them out properly, you're really not going to have any issue with either of them. Now, the BAR, while being a slower firing weapon, absolutely can pack a punch here, so if you're looking for a rifle, it's one or the other. I'd recommend the MX silencer, the 30-inch barrel, the 2.5 times optic, the Chariot WR stock, the hand stop, the Clouser 40-round magazine, lengthened, polymer or hatched grip here at this, hard scope, and fully loaded for this build on the bar. Outside of that, the Vargo, again, is still a weapon that is dominant right now. It again got adjusted with Season 4, the launch here. We talked about that last week, but it made it much easier to control, so therefore making it viable. Now, I will say that just like all of your Cold War assault rifles, it's basically the same build, so we can breeze past this. The GRU suppressor, task force barrel, axial arms 3 times optic, Spetsnaz grip, and the 60-round magazine. Now, number 9 is an SMG that is still pretty solid. It is a weapon we haven't really played around with a ton with recently, but it still packs punch and still is deserving, especially in this Rebirth Island and Fortune's Keep top 10 meta. That being the MP40. For this, I'd recommend the recoil booster, the short barrel, the ISO 1M optic is still what I run. Again, slate reflector, still absolutely viable. I, again, just don't have any problem with these iron sights, and that couple frame benefit of the ADS speed, I'll absolutely take because I don't mind those iron sights. The folding stock, the pistol grip, the Gorenko 45-round magazine, lengthened, the taped grip, as well as unmarked and quick. This one just kind of being a build that I can fly around the map with and still do relatively well with. Now, number 10 here, I'm honestly going to give you 2 weapons for this because I've been going back and forth on what's the last weapon here in terms of long-range play for Rebirth Island and Fortune's Keep that is on the inside looking out and outside looking in. To me, I think these are kind of tied here. They just play 2 different play styles for this. That being the UGM-8 as well as the QBZ. Now, we're going to breeze past both these just because we talked about both of these last week, but for the UGM, the MX silencer, the 560mm barrel, though if you don't want to deal with the burst delay, the 736mm barrel offers up recoil control, bullet velocity, flinch resistance, and reduced scope, sway, and gun bob, and seriously, it is a powerhouse of an attachment as well. So really comes down to which you prefer. The 2.5 times optic, the Mercier WT stock, the hand stop, the Sakura 125-round box mag, lengthened, stippled grip tape, tight grip, and fully loaded. Now, with the burst, it is something that did get adjusted, but it still feels really good. And honestly, I don't think you can go wrong with this. It packs a punch. It's an LMG, but again, very controllable in that nature. And then the QBZ, if you probably guessed the Vargo build, you'll probably guess this one as well. Agency suppressor, task force barrel, axial arms 3 times optic, field agent grip, and the 60-round magazine. But that to me is the top 10, or I guess top 11 weapons here that you should be using for Rebirth Island and Fortune's Keep, and that is what we're going to call this video. So that said, I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of this? Is there any weapon that we may have missed that you think deserves to be in the top 10? Feel free to drop your thoughts below. Let me know how you do if you try any of these out for the very first time. I'd love to hear how they work out for you. But anyways, that's what we're going to call it. So if you enjoyed the video, you find it at all insightful, drop a like on the video, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all things Warzone, Modern Warfare 2, and anything Call of Duty related. We've got you covered with absolutely everything here, so if you guys are interested, I'd love to have you in the community. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care, and peace.